All right, good afternoon, everyone. See, it's 1 o'clock on my watch, and we're ready to go ahead and get started with today's second public open house. Do want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is our second public open house of 4 regarding our updated Clean Vision Plan. My name is Ryan, and I will be moderating today's event. I do want to go over a few things, though, before we get started. Today's presentation, as well as the question and answer session, will be recorded. We'll post the recording on our website at DTEcleanenergy.com. We'll also have instructions at the end of today's open house on ways you can provide comments and recommendations for our Clean Vision Plan. Questions or comments can be submitted anytime during today's event by using the Q&A function on the top right side of your screen. We will queue up audience questions and comments after the presentation is complete. We have several subject matter experts on hand to help answer questions. In instances where the appropriate expert is not present, we will respond by email and/or update the FAQ on the website with your question. We encourage you to include your full name so we can directly address your question, but we do understand some individuals would like to remain anonymous. We also want to let you know there will be a 20-second delay, which is standard for Microsoft Live events. You'll notice pauses during the Q&A section to allow the DTE team to catch up and review questions submitted by the audience. We'll now go over some tips for navigating our Clean Vision website and for participating in today's Microsoft Live event. On January 18th, we hosted the first public open house. The recordings, presentation, and transcripts can be found at DTEcleanenergy.com in the Clean Vision Plan section of the website. On the right, you will see an area called Open House. This is where we'll be posting the content for all public open houses after they occur. To turn on closed captioning, look to the lower right corner of the Teams screen for a button marked CC. Click the button to turn on and off captions. To ask a question, you can click on the thought bubble with the question mark on the top right corner of your screen. Well, that's it for housekeeping. Let's move on to today's agenda. Today, we're going to provide a recap of the first open house and review the survey feedback that our participants submitted. We'll then present an overview on renewables by an expert from DTE Energy, and you'll see and hear how DTE is investing in clean renewable energy such as wind and solar right here in Michigan. Following that presentation, we'll have an expert from Black & Veatch present an overview on emerging technologies in the energy sector. Black & Veatch is a global engineering and construction company with more than 100 years of experience. The company is seen by many as industry experts, and we're glad they're joining us today to share their global view on new innovations that are being deployed by industries around the world. And we will conclude the open house with a live question and answer session. As a reminder, we will be hosting 2 additional virtual meetings, one on March 22nd and another on April 19th. I'll now introduce our panelists for today's open house. Joyce Leslie is Director of Business Planning and Development at DTE. Bielka Hernandez is the Manager of Renewable Energy Strategy at DTE. Jason Rowell is an Associate Vice President and Director at Black & Veatch. And finally, Laura Mickelin is Manager of the Integrated Resource Planning Team. I'll now hand it over to Joyce to get us started.
Welcome. Thank you, Ryan, and thanks everyone for attending the second session of DTE Electric's Clean Vision Open House. My name is Joyce Leslie. I am the Director of Business Planning and Development. My teams focus on long-term electric generation strategy, which includes the Integrated Resource Plan. So I'm looking forward to today's meeting. So as Ryan mentioned, we're going to give a quick recap of our open house that we had a month ago. Today, I am going to start with DTE Electric's carbon emission targets and then describe briefly what an integrated resource plan or an IRP is. Then I'll show the results of the first public open house survey that helped inform the content for today's meeting. So DTE believes that climate change is one of the defining public policy issues of our time, and we're committed to getting as clean as we can, as fast as we can, while taking reliability and affordability into account. We were one of the first electric utilities in 2017 to announce carbon reduction targets, and since then we've updated those targets 3 times. As you can see on page 8, DTE Electric's net zero goal includes reducing carbon emissions 50% by 2028, 80% by 2040, and ultimately reaching net zero emissions by 2050, So we have a pretty good line of sight to that target of 80% by 2040. Our Clean Vision Plan includes investments in state-of-the-art natural gas generation and continuing to expand our renewables while retiring coal plants and promoting energy efficiency and demand response to reduce emissions. We're also upgrading our electric distribution infrastructure to support clean energy now and be ready for emerging technologies in the decades to come. And finally, we're offering our customers affordable ways to go even further through voluntary clean energy programs like My Green Power. So My Green Power is a voluntary green program that enables customers to attribute up to 100% of their energy use to Michigan-made wind and solar, whether they rent or own their home or office space. Now, while we don't have a fully vetted pathway to net zero defined today, we are starting to think about the planning processes and what needs to happen to get us there. So things like advancing new and emerging technology, you're going to hear a little bit more about that, and then continuing to prioritize affordability and reliability as we move towards that net zero carbon future, recognizing that transitioning in a reliable and affordable manner should be thoughtful and deliberate. So what is an integrated resource plan? At the last open house, we discussed in detail what an integrated resource plan is. So today I'm just going to give you a couple highlights. An IRP is a regulatory filing that's made to the state of Michigan, more specifically the Michigan Public Service Commission. Sometimes we'll say the MPSC as a quick acronym. An IRP outlines a utility generation plan for how it will provide energy for its customers over the next 5, 10, and 15 years. It also describes how that utility intends to meet its customer needs reliably and cost effectively. And because there's so many different ways that we can meet those needs, the IRP is the most comprehensive process that utilities have to see how much energy efficiency, along with resources like wind, solar, storage, demand response, and other resources are needed, and when they plan to retire coal plants all in one place. So we do plan on filing an IRP later this year in October. So now I'm going to talk about the results of the survey. So at the first public open house we had a month ago, we polled the audience for feedback on what areas relative to the Clean Vision Plan are you interested in hearing more about at future meetings. So as you can see from the chart on page 10, here are the results of that survey. So if you look at the left side of the chart in the green box, you'll see some of the areas that had higher responses. So based on this feedback, we developed content for today, as well as the March and April open houses. So today we're going to provide an overview of renewables and then an overview on emerging technologies. As I mentioned, these resources will be part of the Clean Vision Plan. So for March's open house, we're going to be focusing on customer demand side management programs as well as My Green Power. So demand side management programs like energy efficiency or demand response are designed to encourage customers to modify their energy use and the pattern of how they use it. In April's meeting, we'll be discussing coal plant retirements and transitions, including our Retire with Pride commitment. So as a reminder, PRIDE stands for people, respect, integrity, dignity, and engagement. We'll also provide an update and discussion around grid modernization and reliability. So we'll provide you this information again at the end of the presentation, along with the dates and times. We also received some feedback on how best to engage you in this virtual environment we're in. So we're going to continue our practice of multiple sessions. We have one again today at 6 o'clock. We also will provide transcripts and recordings, and we'll continue to look for your feedback through the emails and comments. We're going to start to add some documentary videos around interested topics on the Clean Vision website, and then we'll continue with the Q&A sessions in each of our meetings that we'll have. So let's get into today's two topics. So today we're focusing on two subjects that are important to the Clean Vision planning processes: existing generation and new generation. So we have Vielka Hernandez, Manager of Renewable Energy Strategy at DTE, to provide an overview of renewables, followed by Jason Rowell, the Associate Vice President and Director from Black & Veatch. Jason will provide an overview of several emerging technologies. So now I'm going to turn it over to Vielka.
Thank you, Joyce. My name is Vielka Hernandez. I am Manager of Renewable Energy Strategy at DTE Energy. Today, I will be briefly explaining what renewable energy is, explain one of the main drivers of growth in this space, provide an overview of DTE Electric's current portfolio, and finally provide an update of what to expect over the next few years from DTE. So what is renewable energy? Renewable energy is power generated from replenishable resources or energy from a source that is not depleted when used. The two main sources of renewable energy, or the ones that you most likely heard about before, are solar and wind power. Other less mainstream sources of renewable energy are hydroelectric power, biomass energy, and geothermal energy. The majority of DTE's renewable energy fleet is wind, but going forward, we will be adding a lot more solar. If you would like to learn more about renewable energy, by the end of this week, we will have a link to DTE's virtual tour of a wind and solar park uploaded to our website, which is dtecleanenergy.com. DTE Electric is Michigan's largest investor in and producer of renewable energy. Since 2009, we have driven investments of $3 billion in renewable energy infrastructure and will invest or drive investment of an additional $2.8 billion over the next few years, all in Michigan. Our portfolio currently has nearly 2 gigawatts of renewable energy online, generating enough clean energy to power nearly 7,000 homes annually. Since we're here today to support the upcoming filing of the Clean Vision Plan, let's explore how having a diverse renewable generation portfolio will benefit customers. When looking at the combination of wind and solar generation in particular, as shown in this graph, you can see why a balanced mix of renewables will benefit customers. Solar generation starts early in the morning when the sun rises and peaks in the early afternoon, ramping down in the evening when the sun sets. Wind, on the other hand, typically picks up at night. Solar and wind also complement each other seasonally. Wind generates far more energy in the winter as opposed to the summer due to the higher air density and colder temperatures. The complementary nature of wind and solar generation provides for a more reliable, constant source of power than each of them separately. Now that we understand the benefits of having a diverse renewable generation portfolio, let's explore what's driving growth in renewable energy industry. So one factor that's driving growth is cost. It's a common misconception that renewable energy is expensive and dependent on tax credits. Tax credits are federal tax subsidies, which to enable renewable energy to achieve cost parity or equal cost with other forms of generation. While tax credits centrally help drive growth early on, over the past 10 years, the levelized life cycle cost of electricity produced, or LCOE, from renewable resources has dropped substantially, as you can see from the graph. Today, wind projects in Michigan are being built for about $45 to $50 per megawatt hour on average with tax credits. Without tax credits, a new wind park will be about $75 per megawatt hour. By comparison, the cost of a new combined cycle natural gas plant, specifically our new Blue Water Energy Center, is about $45 to $50 per megawatt hour. New coal or nuclear is well over $100 per megawatt hour. The cost of solar has also come down dramatically and even more rapidly than wind. Solar projects coming online in Michigan in 2022 are on par or lower cost than wind projects. For that reason, you will see much more solar in our portfolio moving forward. So you may be wondering now, how has DTE's renewable energy portfolio grown over the years? DTE's renewable portfolio has grown steadily since 2009 and is continuing to grow. The existing renewable energy fleet and the build plan shown here are forecasted to meet and sustain the updated renewable portfolio standard targets, as well as the growing regulatory program demand that we're seeing. Today, we have over 1,700 megawatts in service, and by 2025, we will have over 3,000 megawatts of renewable energy in service. From 2020 to 2025, we will more than double our renewable energy, generating enough clean energy to power over 1 million Michigan homes. So where is all this located and what makes up our renewable portfolio? Given this backdrop, I'd like to give you an overview of DTE's renewable energy fleet. We currently have 18 wind parks, 33 solar arrays in operation, most of which are located in the lower peninsula of Michigan. By the end of this year, we will have more than 2,000 megawatts of renewable energy capacity online. So what's happened recently with our portfolio? Over the last year, we added 3 wind parks and 1 new solar park, all of which will support our My Green Power program, which Joyce mentioned earlier, and which will be a topic in our next public open house on March 22nd. 2 of the new wind parks are located in mid-Michigan and are the largest in the state. The 3rd new wind park, Fairbanks Wind, is our first wind project in the UP. The new solar park assembly is located northwest of Flint. This project is a power purchase agreement, or PPA, where we're buying the energy from a third-party developer. This project is also the first large-scale solar project in Michigan to use racking that enables the panels to rotate during the day, increasing their efficiency. This additional 535 megawatts powers approximately 175,000 Michigan homes. So now you may be wondering what's happening now with our portfolio. Currently, we are in the construction for a Meridian Wind Park, which will be the largest wind project in Michigan once in operation. It's located in Midland and Saginaw counties. Last year, we finished erecting all 77 of the turbines, and we plan to have this project in operation by Q3 of 2022. So what's happening next with our portfolio? We also have 4 other projects fully contracted and approved by the MPSC. Construction has yet to start on these, but all of them will be online in the 2023 to 2024 timeframe. The majority of these projects have already been sold out in the My Green Power program, so we are already planning to launch for a new project solicitation in 2022. In fact, we recently announced that we will be issuing a request for proposal, or RFP, for new project solicitations in the beginning of April, where we are looking to procure up to 500 megawatts to support the My Green Power program. Now, one of the things that's very interesting about the new solar projects we're bringing on is their size. The new solar parks are considerably larger than the Lapeer Solar Park you're seeing pictured here. Lapeer, for example, is 48 megawatts with 2,000 solar panels covering 250 acres. There, 3 of our new solar parks will be over twice this size. By the end of 2025, DTE will generate enough energy from wind and solar to power over 1 million homes. This concludes my renewable overview. Thank you. If you have questions for me or the team here at DTE on renewable energy, please add those to the chat. We look forward to your Q&A discussion and responding to your questions shortly. We now turn to our next topic, emerging technologies. Renewable energy, like wind and solar, will continue to play a critical role in DTE's transition to clean energy. As we progress on our journey, we are studying emerging technologies as they will support our ability to achieve net zero carbon emissions. Today, we are joined by Jason Rao, Associate Vice President and Director of New Energy Solutions at Black & Veatch, to present a brief overview of a few technologies today. To support this discussion and provide you with additional information, Black & Veatch has also developed a series of one-page briefing documents for our website. You can find these on that site, which is DTEcleanenergy.com. Jason, welcome to our open house.
Hey, thank you so much. Again, I'm Jason Rowell, and my role at Black & Veatch is to lead our new energy solutions area, which is to take the electrons from renewable energy and give them new purpose, and it's to take existing fuels and help with a transition to lower carbon. So when we look at the path to net zero, what the choices that we need to make to get there are pretty clear. Renewable energy is going to have a huge role in getting to net zero and providing clean power. We're going to look at electrification, which is taking things that currently run on fuels and making that transition to electricity. We're seeing that happen right now in the automotive world with cars, but it's going to happen to, heat and industrial processes also. And then demand side management, which is really looking at allowing the consumer to control load and be able to manage efficiencies there. Now, bringing all those things together, though, is still not a perfect solution because we can't control when the sun shines. We can't control when the wind blows. And so we have to have support for those systems so that if we have a rainy day or a period where the wind's just not blowing and the consumer demand for electricity is really high, we can back that up. Also, if we make too much energy, more than we need through renewables, how do we save that and then shift it to where we need it more? So there's a supporting cast there that brings this together. If we have too much power at the wrong time of day, we want to store that in batteries, shift it to when customer demand is high and they can use that. Again, if we have too much power for days or even weeks, let's think about March when air conditioners aren't running. We're making a lot of electricity with wind or renewables. We don't want that electricity to go for a loss. We want to be able to save it using long duration technologies and either shift it to a rainy day, a rainy week, or maybe we shift it out into July when we have very high consumer demand and air conditioners are running around the clock, or maybe the winter when heat loads are very high. There's a lot of electricity pull. So not enough renewables and storage when we need it, though, can additionally be a problem. And that's when we want to be able to generate power on demand like we do with our current technologies, but we need it to be net zero from a carbon standpoint. So looking at a few of those technologies, let's start with the first, and those are battery energy storage systems. And that's lithium-ion batteries, currently best in class. It's the same thing you'll see in your telephone. It's the same thing we're looking at putting in electric cars, but these are on huge industrial scale. We can continue to scale that to where they're supporting tens and hundreds of thousands of homes, but ultimately those batteries they give us 1 to 4 hours worth of storage. So they're very good for day shifting power from a time of day when we're making too much renewables versus what the consumer demand is, to another part of the day when consumer demand is higher. So you might think about, middle of the day, very high solar capacity. We're storing that excess energy in batteries. Late in the day, going home, turning on the heater or the air conditioner, consumer demand is much higher. Now we're discharging those batteries to put power back into the grid. Now, as we mentioned, batteries at that 1 to 4 hour play, we need some longer duration systems. What you can see in the background is really what's currently the best in class for long duration storage. That's a picture of the Ludington hydro pump storage facility. And that's one of the top 10 largest in the world. It's the second largest pump storage facility in the US. What you could really classify it out as the second largest battery in the entire country. Those are great for bringing, storing electricity through pumping water up into a high reservoir, and then later of the day, releasing that through turbines into a lower reservoir, in this case, Lake Michigan. But you can't put them everywhere, and we need more long duration storage than we can have ultimately through pumped hydro. So there's a number of technologies that are in development, but they're not all there yet. So you'll hear some technologies probably through the media, such as flow batteries, iron air batteries, which we think have huge potential. It's essentially rust. We're rusting iron and using that in a way to control energy flow. Thermal energy storage, which is, using heat. Maybe it's solar heat, maybe it's from another process, but we're going to store it in sand or graphite up to, thousands of degrees Fahrenheit, and then later use that to produce steam and run a turbine. Kinetic energy, very simple. One example we give is pushing really heavy rail cars up a hill. That's storing energy. And then later when you need to release it and put power back into the grid, you let those rail cars roll back down the hill and turn generators. Another case we've been looking at is using old mine shafts to take huge weights up and down as you store energy and then release it again. And then chemical, hydrogen is a great example. So using those excess renewable energies to save and store that as hydrogen and then later use that as a fuel. And this allows us to store power for days or weeks or even months to shift renewables around to when they're needed most, and ultimately allow more and more renewables into the system, enabling them. So hydrogen, let's talk about that. It's very popular. We hear about it in the media quite often. It's the most abundant element in the universe, and it's not new, even though we're looking at it as a clean fuel more and more now. 100 million tons per year of hydrogen are produced. About half of that goes to produce ammonia for fertilizer. The other half goes into creating gasoline and diesel fuel at refineries. And the way we produce it now, there's CO2 that's emitted to the atmosphere. So we're looking at future production. In fact, we're ramping up production that is clean, either generating it as what's called green hydrogen, which is taking that excess renewables, splitting the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen, and then being able to use those molecules as a fuel, and then oxygen you can have beneficial use downstream, or what we call blue hydrogen quite often, and that's using conventional methods with natural gas, but now we're capturing and sequestering that carbon. And ultimately this hydrogen is allowing us to have carbon-free power, and it allows us to store enormous quantities of hydrogen. In fact, Black & Veatch is working on a project right now in Utah that's going to be able to store hydrogen for months worth of excess renewables and then release that in the seasons when it's needed most. And millions of end users are going to be able to benefit from that, again, clean battery through hydrogen storage. I mentioned carbon capture. That's partly applicable to producing hydrogen, but it's also applicable to taking the CO2 generated by our current fuel use in power plants and locking that away. You hear about carbon capture in the media quite often as new. Is it going to be applied to these? It's been around for more than 40 years. Black & Veatch has been building carbon capture plants for more than 40 years in the gas, fuel, and chemicals business. So what's really different now is looking at applying it to power plants where in previous times it hasn't been economical. Now that we're going forward and there's more incentives to use that CO2 or to remove it, it is becoming economical, and certain countries are leading the path. And then the U.S. is starting to follow and is going to benefit greatly, I think, from new technologies that are proven in newer applications, I should say. Existing technologies proven in newer applications. So carbon capture allows us to capture 85 to 95% of the CO2 being released from any given gas. And those technologies are constantly improving. They're bringing down the cost. They're making it more efficient. And once we capture that CO2, there's a couple of things you can do with it. So there's beneficial use, locking it away in concrete, helping that harden. We're looking at making a lot of products that currently are carbon based out of that CO2, but those still need to scale so that we can take the CO2 from multiple power plants and lock it away in that method. Another place is to sequester it in the earth. And that also, again, is not new. Really over 800 million tons per some of the latest resources out there. Over 800 million tons of CO2 has been permanently sequestered in the ground. A lot of that through a process called enhanced oil recovery. And there's over 4,500 miles of CO2 pipelines in the U.S. alone that are moving CO2 around from various resources into sequestration wells or where it's being used for enhanced oil recovery. So this is a technology that is very well proven out. And again, we're looking at new applications. And then I mentioned, so that goes into really kind of that clean power generation. When we don't have enough storage, when we need a lot of power for an emergency, or you have an extended duration where you need power. Beyond using carbon capture in existing facilities, there's nuclear. And nuclear of the future is really going to look different than I think what we're used to today. We're moving away from these very large reactors that were difficult to build and could take more than a decade to get online, into what's going to be called small modular reactors. So they're about 1/5, maybe even 1/10 the size of a current nuclear reactor. We're taking 60, 70 years of engineering learnings and operation learnings and applying them to make inherently safe designs, which ultimately means you won't need any user intervention. You don't need any mechanical systems. They're passive safety systems that use things like gravity to help control that reactor. And then we're able to improve the fuel usage so that we need much less nuclear fuel to run these reactors. Because they're smaller, they're factory built to a large extent. So we can improve quality, we can implement them quicker. A lot of it can just be brought into site on trucks and put in place. They're much easier to construct. And then finally, the newer reactors, they're all being designed considering a grid that has heavy renewables, where the older reactors were your base load generation, meaning they were operating all the time, putting power into the grid, and that's where their economics were best. These newer reactors are being designed considered the wind blows differently and the sun shines differently throughout the day. And this reactor needs to be able to cycle up and down as the consumer demand goes up and down, so that we can match that and maintain a reliable and resilient grid. So small modular reactors, they're definitely progressing very well. The Canada and the United States are two of the top countries in moving these forward. But as you can see in the takeaway, there's still hurdles to clear. I mean, it's really going to be more than 10 years until these have been demonstrated through some early plants that have gone into operation. And then other utilities start to say, hey, we want to adopt this, and it becomes more widely suited around the US. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. That was a great presentation. And Bielka, thank you again for your overview of DTE's renewable energy fleet. So as we said, we're excited to now talk about our future open houses and opportunities. Just a reminder, today's presentations on renewable energy and emerging technologies can be found on our website, as well as future meeting information at dtecleanenergy.com. Before we go to the Q&A, we want to preview our March and April open house meetings. On March 22nd, we'll hear about DTE's customer programs for our energy waste reduction and demand response teams, and you'll have a chance to hear more about renewables and our Mine Green Power program, which is our voluntary renewable energy program where customers can subscribe up to 100% of their electricity to Michigan-based renewable energy. And then on April 19th, we'll have a discussion on coal plant retirements and transitions, specifically our Retire with Pride initiative. You'll also hear from our distribution operations team about grid modernization efforts and reliability. So with that, we will now go to our live Q&A. I'll say all of your questions are important to us, and we will do our best to get through as many as we can. You may also see responses to questions posted directly in the Q&A channel. And if you have a question that isn't already there, now is a great time to type it in. And please remember to include your full name. Well, let's go ahead with our first question. This question was emailed to us previously. And Laura, this question is for you. How will DTE be looking at emerging technologies in the Clean Vision Plan? And are there only ones you are looking at?
Thanks, Ryan. So I'll take the second part first. So no, we will be looking at a variety of emerging technologies, the ones that Jason mentioned, but we'll also look at traditional technologies such as gas combustion generators and also both renewable wind and solar, as well as demand response and energy efficiencies. technologies. So all of these different types of technologies will be considered in our optimization modeling tool, and we will evaluate these all on the basis of cost to customers, their environmental impacts, as well as reliability.
Vielka, the next question we have is for you. Question is, will all of DTE's new renewable energy projects be in Michigan?
Our preference is to site all renewable energy projects in Michigan.
All right, well, we are not seeing any additional questions yet coming into the queue. As a reminder, though, you can always submit questions through our website and by email. So let's go ahead and prepare to close out today's presentation. We do appreciate your questions and for joining us for our second open house. We will be posting the recordings and transcript of today's public meeting on our website in the coming days. You can also find an FAQ on our website. This is updated based on questions we receive through the open house meetings and through our website and email. So again, thank you to our panelists today for the presentation, and we look forward to seeing everyone next month. Thank you. Have a great day.